Hello, welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fanfiction.
That is, in fact, what we're doing.
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
It's Halloween today.
This also might be our 100th episode.
Oh, damn!
I think this is our 100th episode.
Oh, happy 100 episodes to us, and it's Halloween.
Either this is our 100th episode, or the mini-sode that comes out tomorrow will be our 100th episode. And we just recorded that, so that didn't get mentioned. So we've reached 100 episodes. It's pretty exciting.
Oh my goodness, look at us go.
I know. All right, well, you ready to read chapter 17?
Yes, okay. So it's Melodramatic Blubberbrains, which I originally read as Melancholy Blueberries.
Same thing.
So,
Sad blueberries.
Sad blueberries. Remus found her. She didn't want to be found and resisted his attempts to comfort her. Melody was in no mood for comfort. She didn't care about the ball, she didn't care about her dress, and she didn't care about lying in a crumpled up heap on the floor of a deserted classroom, bawling just so long as no one disturbed her. Melody? Remus said, attempting to touch her. She slapped his hand away and buried her face in her arms, choking herself apart with sobs, but it didn't work. Her ribcage held, and instead of bursting apart, she fell into a fit of coughing. Remus grabbed her by the shoulders and yanked her up. Melody let out a strangled and annoyed sort of noise, but it didn't have much effect. She was still just coughing. She sucked in a long, labored breath, and as soon as she could breathe, she just quickly pushed it out again with a painful sob. Melody, Remus said again, a bit more sympathetically. Searching through his pockets for some kind of useful cloth, he didn't own any handkerchiefs, so he didn't really know why he was searching, but he wasn't about to offer his sleeve to her. Normally he wouldn't have cared, but these dress robes didn't belong to him. He had borrowed them from Sirius, so he didn't want to ruin them. So maybe Sirius owned a handkerchief or something, anything. Melody was blubbering. Remus was being useless, so he began searching more frantically and eventually turned up several napkins he, for some reason, had grabbed at the ball. Here, he said, extending the napkins. Melody took them and blew her nose, and within a minute the napkins were gone, crumpled into useless balls discarded on the floor, tears still leaking out of her eyes. Within another minute, she was sniffling again. She glanced at Remus and just shook her head. "Just go away, Moony. There's nothing you can do," she hiccuped. "Maybe not, but I'd at least like to know what's going on." Melody glared at him weakly. "Do I look like I want to talk?" "Sure you do." "Why, you look so smashing, I'd say you were prepared for an interview with the Daily Prophet." "Shut up, Moony," Melody grumbled, resting her head on her knees and hiding behind a curtain of hair. Remus could see the corners of her mouth twitch up just slightly. "I look horrible," she insisted. "Nah," Remus said after a moment, reaching over to push Melody's hair behind her ear. "Don't try to make me laugh, Moony," she requested, turning her face towards him. "I really don't want to laugh right now." "And why is that?" Melody shook her head miserably. I screwed everything up so horribly." She started sobbing again. "Nice job," Remus told himself. He sighed resignedly. "Come on, Melody," he coaxed, trying not to sound too heartless. "You need to get up." He tugged at her arm, and Melody yanked it away. "No! Go away!" Remus sighed. "You have to get up. It is past curfew." "What?" She hiccuped again. "The ball is over. Come on." "Oh, sod curfew." "I'm not going." Melody curled up on the floor again. "Just leave me alone. There's nothing you can do anyways." "I beg to differ," Remus said, yanking her up off the floor rather unceremoniously. "Ow!" Melody shrieked, more surprised than hurt. "Shh! Stop carrying on. We have to get you out of here." No, she shrieked again, backing away. I am not going back to Gryffindor Tower, and you can't make me. Well, who said anything about going there? Remus demanded. Melody hiccuped and stared at him in confusion. But you said it's past curfew, and you thought I was going to be a goody two-shoes and make you go to bed like you're supposed to? Well, yeah. People always forget that I'm a marauder too, Remus said, looking up at the ceiling. It's just pathetic. I sneak out of the castle, I cause all kinds of trouble, explode dung bombs everywhere, set mice loose in the Great Hall while the owls are coming in during breakfast, and still, it's never enough. Everyone always thinks James and Sirius all the time, and I never get any credit. It's pathetic. Wait, the mice. That was you? Remus looked at the ceiling again. See what I mean? I try, and I'm never good enough, always living in the shadow of someone greater. I thought that was James. Remus looked at her. Well, it was James, but it was my idea. Melody shook her head at him. Melodramatic blubberbrain that you are. Remus smiled. Better than a hysterically crying prima donna. Oh, watch it, Moony, Melody said, sniffing and attempting to wipe some of the tears off of her face. Come on, he said, before taking her arm. Before Mrs. Norris comes and rats us out. You know Peter hates that expression, Melody said without thinking, as she allowed Remus to lead her from the classroom. Why had that popped into her head of all things? She decided that it was better than crying over Sirius, though, at least for the moment, so she went with it. He says it's derogatory to rats. Well, rats are derogatory creatures. That's not a very nice thing to say about Wormtail, you know. Remus shrugged. Just because I like Wormtail doesn't mean I have to like rats. I hear that rats are the next big thing, you know. Really? Yep. Everyone at Hogwarts next year is going to have a rat. It's a good thing you're leaving, Moony. You'd be very unpopular. Yeah, Remus agreed, unconcerned. Poor Peter, though. He has to leave just as he's about to come into fashion. What a pity. Well, he wouldn't do much good at Hogwarts as a rat now, would he? No, I expect not, but it's a great way to meet girls, though. As a rat? Well, you know, he's far too shy to meet them as a human. Melody nearly laughed. I suppose. Would you like to tickle it, or should I? Remus asked, pointing to the pair. They had reached the giant painting of fruit leading into the kitchens. You go ahead, I'm not in the mood. Remus extended his finger and tickled the pair, and a handle appeared. They entered the kitchens together. Several house elves scurried over as they entered, and Remus requested tea for both of them. Once they were seated and Melody had composed herself, Remus looked at her until she had met his gaze. So what did you do? Melody stared at him for a moment, offended. Oh, so right away it's all my fault, right? Like Sirius didn't do anything and... Hey, wait a minute. You were the one who said you messed things up so horribly, remember? Melody glared at him. That's not funny, Moony. I'm miserable and all you're doing is mocking me.
All right, we took a small break because Olivia woke up.
And we had lunch.
Yes, we had some cheese quesadillas. So if there's baby noises, it's because Olivia's in here with us now. She's playing with her toys.
She seems to be very content today.
I think she was growing last week.
Ah, so somebody was a little bit cranky last week, which that makes sense.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Melody. It's just, well, don't you think you're being a bit dramatic? Melody blinked and stared at him. she just ruined her friendship with Mimi and destroyed any possibility of a relationship with the boy she had been falling in love with for 3 years. And all Remus could say was that she was being dramatic. Melody felt like she had just taken a knife and carved a piece of her own heart out and then thrown it into a nest of starving baby dragons who deep fried it before ripping it into shreds and making it disappear behind sharp, unforgiving fangs. If she weren't so busy hating herself for ruining her own life, in between hating Remus for being so ununderstanding, she would have congratulated herself on her outstanding imagery. Maybe it wasn't exactly outstanding, but for the state of mind she was in, it was still pretty remarkable. Normally, Remus was very understanding and kind and not a complete insensitive jerk when it came to other people's feelings. As if Melody hadn't been feeling bad enough already, sobbing on the floor of a classroom, Remus had drug her to her feet and into the kitchens for this? Fuck you, Mooney, she had said finally, uttering the worst words she could think of. You don't have a goddamn clue what you're talking about. Remus took this insult with a nod and took a drink of his tea before responding. Let me take a wild guess. You confessed your feelings to Sirius and he rejected you? Well, maybe Remus kind of had a clue what he was talking about. It's not that simple, Mooney, she snapped, taking a sip of her own tea and slamming her cup back down on the saucer with a sharp clatter. Ah, you confessed your feelings to Sirius and he didn't reject you, and then Mimi found out?
Ding ding!
All right, Remus was pretty good at guessing, but he wasn't exactly spot on. He was still downplaying the whole affair with more insensitivity than Melody would have liked. Remus, I really don't think you understand that. I bet Mimi walked in on you. Melody faltered. He was getting better at this whole guessing thing. Look, Mooney, And she did, didn't she? I bet you were kissing him or something, weren't you? Melody stared at Remus and then glanced at his drink. Did he put some kind of special mind-reading potion in that tea when she wasn't paying attention? Well, Mooney, and She cut herself off for a moment, fuming at Remus's newfound accuracy.
I don't think it's newfound. Remus has always been kind of spot on with guessing things.
Right, because he's good at reading people.
Yes.
He's always been good at reading people. It's just who he is.
Yep.
I never meant for Mimi to... She continued, searching for words. But no, that didn't sound right. No, I just... Emotions seized Melody's throat and tightened it. Tears popped up into her eyes, hot and fresh and blurry, as the events ran through her mind again. So fiercely that she didn't notice Remus requesting a pile of napkins from the house elves. The napkins were there, though, when the emotions ebbed and her nose was red and stuffy again. Remus waited patiently for her to clear her eyes and her nose and take a few sips of her tea. Melody grabbed a new napkin and dabbed at her eyes again, and then held on to the napkin for no other reason than to fiddle with something. After a moment she spoke again, softly and clearly, and with more composure. It wasn't just what happened, Mooney. It was the way I let Mimi down. How I avoided and ignored her and then stabbed her in the back the first chance I got. And the way I've treated Sirius, I should have done something sooner. And this wasn't fair. It wasn't right. I just needed to say something before he had to go. I didn't mean to say what I ended up. It just came out. And then I couldn't run away from it anymore. And Melody felt a bit foolish, confessing the next bit to Remus. He was a boy, after all. And she didn't share with the Marauders what she did with Lily. But still, She might not see Lily before she left, and Remus would still be here, and it was Remus she needed to talk to. I don't know. I needed to kiss him again. Her heart thumped extra hard with the memory. Sirius's lips were warm and soft and smooth and slid so easily against hers, and his tongue, well, maybe she shouldn't be thinking about that right now. Not in front of Remus, anyway. Not that it wasn't decent or anything, but it wasn't as though Remus needed to know about Sirius's tongue either way. Anyway, she continued, Remus, who was not usually exposed to this kind of girl talk, shifted in his chair and drank some more tea, wishing briefly he had opted for butterbeer or pumpkin juice instead. For some reason, the cup and saucer before him were making him a bit too, well, feminine. Even though they weren't particularly girly in appearance, and no different than the ones his mom served him tea in at home. In fact, the ones at home had little pink flowers on them, and he never thought twice about his manliness while drinking from one.
I feel like that's not really a thing that crosses English gentlemen's minds. I feel like tea's tea to them, and
Right, no matter what it's served in.
they don't care what they're drinking it out of.
Yeah, that struck him as odd, but he probably should have been listening to Melody instead of thinking about the teacups. So he tried to stop focusing on the pink flowers and manliness. He reached across the table and put his hand on hers, and her speech halted. You can't change what happened, Melody. I know, she replied, avoiding his gaze. But that doesn't make me feel any better about it.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trapdoor.
You can leave us a review on Facebook or Apple Podcasts. It would literally mean the world to us.
Or you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at thetrapdoor16.
Or if you have any longer thoughts, you can shoot us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week.
See you next week.